Very welcome to you all. Today we are going to have the day 2 of the ManageEngine OpManager Plus free training. So my name is Kishore Kumar. I'm the Technical Account Manager for the solution ManageEngine IT Operations Management. Over 6 years now on this business. So today, the day 2 session is going to discuss about the monitoring the network and IT infrastructure. And those who has not attended the day 1 of training, I'll go through a quick glimpse of what is the difference between the OpManager and OpManager Plus. OpManager Plus is a bundled package where we offer all the network monitoring solutions on a single go. And OpManager is an NMS tool where it has the network and IT infrastructure monitoring. And if you would like to have your application, database, firewall log and rule monitoring, configuration management, you have to go with an add-on on top of it. So the part 2 of today's discussion, the agenda will be on the monitoring the device's availability performance metric that includes the physical server, virtual machines, network devices, and IT infrastructure monitoring. So the question here, during the last meeting, we discussed about the mechanism of discovery. What are all the different types of devices which we can add and monitor an application, and how we can add them, what protocol is being used. So now the discussion over here is, when I add a device in OpManager application, it started monitoring, it started collecting data, but what is the technology which is being used on the backend, which is allowing to add the device and provide me the data. So this information is very important to understand how the application is communicating with the devices in your environment to monitor and report a problem if things are going beyond the expected threshold configuration. Basically, when I add a device with an SNMP protocol, it has a system object identifier. So all the devices which is having the SNMP service will have this object identifier. So whenever I'm discovering a device in OpManager application, it will try to compare the object identifier of the device with the default device template present on the product. By comparing the value, it will associate the device and it will make sure the device is properly associated to the correct device template. In cases where we have a Windows server and we prefer to go only with the WMI, in this case, the application is using a Win32 operating system WMA class to define what is the OS version and which type of Windows server they are. And for CLI-based devices, we are using the command uname-s that will help us to identify what type of device are they. And this information are hard-coded in the application. So every time when we discover a device using the CLI protocol, that will get associated to the proper device template. So let me show you what device template we have in the product. This application comes with a default 11,000 plus device templates. In market, we have a lot of vendors with different models. So the most of the devices that we use for the business, it will be supported on the application. Just in case we have a new vendor or a new model emerging in the market, which is something going to be suitable for our business, and we have got that one. And now there is a question. This is something relatively new. How can I go ahead and monitor in my product in the OpManager? So here we have the solution of customized device template. Even if a new device, new model, any vendor, no matter. If we have the SNMP protocol, SNMP service being running on the machine, and if we have the vendor document of the MIP files, then we can go ahead, create our own customized device template in the OpManager application. Let me quickly navigate to the GUI and show you where we can find this information. In settings, configuration, device template, we have the predefined device templates of the OpManager application. So here I can navigate into any device template and I can see all the information, the vendor, the category, and few other performance monitors associated with it. So this performance monitor, I will check and let you know in detail when we are discussing about that point. And let me move back to our slides. So inventory. Now I have added the device in the OpManager application. And the device has started to monitor. So I have a holistic view of all the discovered devices in my inventory. In the GUI, if I navigate to my inventory, I see all the devices right over here. And we have a filter option on the left where we can filter a servers, or if I want to filter any switch or firewalls, I can go ahead and filter and look for the specific device category. If I want to make it based upon the type, I can also go with it like a 2016, 2012 R2 Windows machine. Or if I want to look for a Linux, then I can go for the Linux. And even a vendor-based filter is also available. We still have few filters such as groups, business view, protocol, and apps. This I will take you in detail when I'm discussing about the business view and group feature available on the product. This is another view called as a tree view. Here we have all the filter option, just like how we see on the donut view. And now I have my inventory ready. This contains all the devices which I am monitoring and managing in the application. So if I'm navigating to a device, I see the snapshot page of the device where it provides me the information about the availability of the device, what is the polling mechanism it is being using, and the manufacturer, model, serial number, hardware information, all the data are available on the device summary. And this is how a screen looks like when we add a device in the application. So these are all the few tabs which is present over here. Interfaces, finding the flow, getting the configuration of the devices, hardware sensor information, the port view, and the monitors. So this is again the additional features that we have on the product, and I'll explain it in detail when we are discussing about the add-on features over here. So the monitor templates. Okay, now I added my device in the application, and the device is associated with the proper template, and it has the information about the model, vendor, and all the data. The next step is I want to monitor the metrics over there. That involves a performance metric, a process, and a service running on the machine. Even if I want to test a URL or a customized way of doing a script monitoring, a log monitoring, and a trap and syslog monitoring. So this is something essential that we want to put into the device once it has been onboarded for monitoring. So here we have the options. I navigate to settings, monitoring, where I have all the features of the monitoring metrics. Here I have performance, applications, and Windows service all together. So let me show you one sample device which I have right over here and how to associate it. I go to this monitoring segment. I go to this performance monitor. I have my CPU utilization right over here. So this contains the information of the monitoring interval and what thresholds can be configured over here. So threshold is an important metric. For example, I have few machines in my environment. Some are test machines, some are production machines, and some of them are core devices. I want to define a threshold. In some cases, the test machines will always go with a high utilization due to the multiple users being connected and using over there. But core machines cannot be considered on a same way because we want to maintain the server resource utilization to a certain extent. If it is going beyond the limit, that might hit the performance, and obviously that is not a good sign for any business. So whenever we are defining a threshold, the application is offering a adaptive threshold, which is an automation feature. When I hit this adaptive threshold, the application will collect data for 7 days to identify the utilization trend, how the resource is being utilized in your environment. It will monitor the trend for the 7 days, which includes the business days, non-business days, because during the business hours, yes, of course, the traffic will be higher, and during the non-business hours, the traffic will be lower. So it depends upon the correlative data. The application will define what would be the suitable threshold for this machine. And if the threshold is violating beyond the recommended values, the application is going to report us there is a problem. And there is also an option where we can go and do a manual threshold configuration. I can set my CPU utilization attention to be a 50, trouble to be 70, critical to be 90, and RAM to be lesser than or equal to 49. So I will also explain you what this attention, trouble, critical, and RAM refers. These are all the severities that we can receive as an alarm in application. So it depends upon the criticality of the problem, we can define the severity configuration. And RAM is a clear condition. Once the monitoring value hit the RAM condition, it will consider the problem is resolved and the alarm will be cleared. And then we have a consecutive times. This will help us to configure when the alarm has to be triggered. For example, I'm monitoring a device. The application found it is problematic due to some high resource consumption. Do I need to trigger an alarm right away, or should I wait till the next polling to get complete and see whether the device is still being violated with the threshold for the consecutive times? I can define these values right over here on the page. And this is a way of assigning the threshold values for the performance monitor. And also, I can navigate into the individual device and I can go to the monitors tab. Here I have the performance monitor where I can click on the edit monitor and configure the threshold values. So we have multiple options. If I'm going for a device specific configuration, I want to make a configuration for a single device for a particular monitor. I can navigate into the device and make the configuration. If I want to make it globally and assign this configuration for multiple devices, I can go to the performance monitor, make the configuration, and there is an associate icon. Using this, I can choose the list of devices to which I have to assign the value. There is also one more navigation where I can assign my thresholds. I can go to settings, configuration, device template, and depends upon the type of device and navigate into the template. Here I can make the threshold configurations, and there is a save and associate, and I have an override configuration option where all the configuration which I have recently done on the template will be overwritten on the device, which is on the selected column. And availability monitoring. So the first and foremost thing, whenever I discover a device in the application, the availability has to be monitored. I want to know whether the device is active or it is down. So this availability monitoring primarily happens through the ICMP ping method. The OpManager application will try to ping the monitored device from its server and check whether the ping packets are successful. If we get a successful packet response, the device will be considered as active. If the ping packet is getting failed, the device will be considered as down. In few DMZ environment, we have seen ICMP is blocked, so they are looking for an alternate way to monitor the availability of device. That in where we have built in an additional feature of monitoring via the TCP port and SNMP protocol. So here, the application will try to check, are we getting a response for the SNMP from the device through port 161? And if there is a successful response, we do consider the device is active. Similarly, for the TCP, we can define a port as per our requirement to set or check the availability. If the port is reachable, then the device will be considered as active. And threshold settings for the availability. So I have my device's availability being monitored. I know my device is currently active or down. Still, I want to understand what is the packet loss and what is the response time of the device. So when I navigate into the device snapshot page, there is an availability timeline. So this timeline is going to provide the information of the 24 hours, the current 24 hours. Below that, we have the dials for availability, packet loss, and response time. In this packet loss, we have an option. This will allow us to assign a threshold for our packet loss value. So we can use the percentage, the unit is percentage. Similarly, we can use the severities of attention, trouble, critical, and REAM for these values, and I can assign my threshold for the packet loss. Even here, we have the adaptive threshold value that can be configured to automatically define my thresholds for the packet loss and even for the response time. So this is for an individual device. When I want to make a threshold configuration for the availability monitoring for a bulk of device, I can go with a quick configuration. So in settings, configuration, quick configuration visit, I have a threshold settings. Here, availability monitors are available, and for the response time and packet loss, we can navigate between the radio button, put in the value. Next, we can choose the required devices that needs to be associated with the configuration, and we can mark this value. So now the availability of the device is monitored in the application to identify whether the device is active or down. Along with it, we have also configured the threshold for the packet loss and response time of the availability performance metric. And also we have a device dependency configuration. Let me explain about it. I have a core switch or a core router in which a child device has been connected. In some scenarios, the switch or the core machine went down. So it is understood all the dependent devices which is being connected to it are down. In such cases, I have a 50 dependent devices, one parent device. My parent went down, all my dependent went down. If the application is raising an alarm for all the 50 dependent devices, it's going to be a flood of alarms. So we might tend to miss the most critical or valuable message due to the alarm floods. So to prevent it, the application have an intelligence to configure the dependency on it. So we can configure a parent device, we can configure a child device so that whenever the parent went down, the child devices will go to the dependent unavailable status. So the configuration can be done over here. I can choose my uplink dependency. I can select my parent device and save it. And once this is configured, if the parent went down, the child devices will not be raising an alarm to reduce the noise on the product. And you can see the status. Right now it is showing green in color. In such cases, you will see dependent unavailable status. So here you see the color coding. Up, green in color. On maintenance, which is gray in color, we have dependent unavailable. On hold, down, not monitored. I will walk you what are all the different status of the availability. This represents the device is up and running fine. This mentions it is on maintenance. That might be a scheduled maintenance happening on the environment. There could be a patching activity, or there might be a change of machines. So during that time, the application has to be notified there is some environmental activity that is going to happen. So due to this reason, these devices are not going to be available for the certain period of time because it is very important configuration. I'll tell you why. The availability report, which is being provided by the OpManager application, is being used as an important area for the KPI metrics. To do a KPI metric, we have a set of requirements where the engineers has to make sure the device availability. If the device availability is going down, that's going to hit their KPI metrics. So this information is being calculated from the OpManager's availability report. So whenever there is a maintenance, we have to put the device on the maintenance, so it is not going to impact the availability percentage on the report, and your KPI will be up to date with the correct value. And this is the dependent unavailable, which we just discussed about the uplink dependency configuration. And this is on hold. On hold is nothing but I'm putting my device manually to an unmanaged state. So here I have an unmanaged state. It could be a non-scheduled activity, like an on-demand reason that you want to make your device go down for some reason. Then you can go put an unmanaged state manually over here. And this is down. It represents the device is not available. And this is not monitored. So not monitored could typically happen when I'm adding the device for the first time in OpManager application, but for some reason, the device is not reachable from the server. So during that time, the device will show on the inventory, but it will be on the not monitored status. That is, you have tried to add a device. However, the device is not meeting the criteria which is required to be monitored in OpManager. So it is showing up on the not monitored status. Next, the performance monitor, which we had a quick discussion, how to add a monitor, how to assign the threshold for it. And also, I'll show you one example. In the application, it is monitoring your resource, which I have mentioned earlier, but how the alarms is going to appear when I'm doing my resource monitoring, and what information that is going to be provide me for the betterment of the result. You can look here on the screen. This is one of the sample alarm which is being triggered for the high CPU utilization. So as per the message, the expected threshold value is 33%, and the current usage is being classified by listing out the top 3 process which is consuming the resource of the machine. You can see the top 3 process name. So every time, I'll tell you, this resource consumption is not a static way, it is dynamic. I might be having a high resource consumption, maybe after 30 minutes or after a few minutes, it will go down to the normal state. It might be temporary spike as well. So when the application is reporting you there is a high utilization in your server, when you manually go interview, check what is the problem during that time, it might be normal. It might go back to the normal condition. So the admin might be wondering what is the reason, what makes the resource to be consumed high at that time. So they need to manually investigate and identify things. To ease this process, whenever there is a high resource consumption of the CPU or let it be the RAM, the application will let you know the top 3 process which has consumed the resource of your machine during the time of resource spike. And using this information, we can identify which service or application they belong to, and we can take the necessary action of it. And additionally, there is something called as a workflow. This part I will explain you in detail during our last session where we are going to talk about the automation. Using the workflow, we can create a flow mechanism where whenever there is a threshold violation, I can even get the complete list of process being running on the machine at that time and what is the consumption of the resource. So if you want some in-depth information, the application is offering through its automation technology. So moving back to the slide, the general thumb rule. So if you want to make a configuration to a group of devices, we can make use of the templates. that is a device template and the performance monitor option. And if you want to make a configuration for an individual device, then we have to do it on the respective devices. This we just discussed, showing up the configuration, how we can do it on the performance monitoring over here, and by editing the thresholds. And we also had a look on the device template right over here, where we can edit the thresholds. Even here, you can go for edit threshold option, put in the value, and associate to the devices. So this is the method how you can configure your thresholds on bulk or for individual devices. Let's come to the server monitoring. In server, the application is widely spread to monitor all your virtual machines, physical servers, all these models. And basically, when we take a server monitoring, the performance monitor, the performance metric in the server can be monitored. And the server specific monitors like process, what are all the service being running on the machine, whether I want to monitor a specific file or folder in the server, event logs can be done. And the hardware sensor monitoring can also be achieved. So process monitoring. So it's very straightforward. I have some process being running on my machine. I want to monitor them. So I'll show you a live example how we can pull in the monitoring metrics. I go to settings, monitoring. I'll go to the process monitoring, and I'm clicking on add monitor. I'm choosing the device over here, choosing the protocol, and I'm clicking on next. So the application will do a real-time polling to identify what are all the process which is currently running on the machine. It will list down all the process over here where we can pick the one which is required for us and associate to the devices. This is a way of doing a discovery, and there is also another option where we can navigate into an individual device. We can go to monitors, we can go to process monitors, and we have an option of add monitor to fetch the information and add it to the device. And also we have associate monitors. Associate monitors will help us to list down the default set of monitors present on the device, and the application can be added. For example, there are some process that is going to be running on multiple machines, multiple servers. Then you can go to this settings, monitoring, process monitor. You can click on add, and you can add that information over here. And the same way, we are also going to do a service monitoring. I go to my service monitors in the application. So these are all the default set of services which we have provided in the product. If we want to associate these services directly, we can go ahead and do it. Or if I want to add a service, I can manually put some name. I can select the port in which the service is running. My service is running on port 80, 80, 60, or something like that. I can put the information, put in the timeout, how long it's going to take. And also I can configure rise an alarm with service down, critical, trouble, attention. What severity I want, I can make it. And severity if it is unavailable for. This is something related to the consecutive time. I can put this information. And here we have an option of scan during the discovery. That is, once I enable this option, every time when I'm adding the device in OpManager application, it will try to test whether this particular port is available on the respective machine, whether it is being utilized, and then it will provide us the status based upon that. And you can also go to the default existing service monitor which is present on the product, which can be go with a save and associate option, and then it can be associated to the respective device in which we want to add it and save. Once saved, when we go to the inventory, the specific device, we could see the service monitor which we have added right now. And we have the file and folder monitoring. So sometimes we have a requirement. I want to monitor some files to see whether it is active or not. Maybe if someone has accidentally deleted the file or moved to a different location, I want to get this notified. And also I want to understand how the file is getting grown. For example, the file is having a size of 1 GB. If the file is growing beyond 2 GB of size, I want to get it notified. And the age of the file. So these informations can very well be monitored on the application. The configuration is over here. If I want to go for an individual device, I have my file monitoring over here. I can add a monitor. For example, I'll do one thing. I'll put a name as test. In my desktop, I'll try to create one file. Just let me know. I'm creating one file here. I name it as test. It is on the desktop. I'll go to properties, get the navigation of the file. Coming back to the application, I'm putting the path of the file, the name of the file with its extension. I'm doing a test monitor. So now I got a result, file exists. I can further drill down and I can add the information like attributes such as file contains. Inside the file, the application can also read your file. I can put some information like error. And if the file is having this string value as error, it will notify us with the attention severity, which can also be configured. Similarly, I can do my file existence monitoring, whether the do not monitor. I mean, if the file is not being available, what has to be done? What severity has to be triggered during that time? This configuration can be done. The file size can also be monitored, as I mentioned. Here we can set the thresholds and the realm. If it is going beyond certain limit, get me an alert. And once it hit this particular value, clear the alarm. And this is the age monitoring of the file. And this is modification, most important. If the file is modified for some reason, manually or through any kind of backend trigger, if I want to get it notified, I can have this information notified on the product. The same applies to the folder monitoring. I can add a folder by putting the navigation over here, and I can identify the folder availability, size of the folder, and whether this folder is modified. Similarly, I can get the string value configuration to find if any file is present inside the folder and what is the size or age of the files which is present inside the folder and the total number of files which is present inside the folder. So these information can be monitored, and also we can have our customized threshold configuration to notify if there is any changes being performed without our knowledge. Okay. Now we have the script template. So these are all the features which is available in application, and we have some requirement. There will be a custom script which is being developed by our admins, and the script will perform a certain task of monitoring, automation, or testing. And I want to implement the script through a trigger on the product. This is my requirement. For example, I have a server. In that server, I'm monitoring the service information of my AV. And I have written a script. If my AV is detecting a failure, then it has to do a certain task on the machine. So this is a customized script done by the admin. And I want to execute this script through automation rather than every time I manually hit the script by navigating to the machine. I have an automation requirement. In this case, we can come to the OpManager application. Using the script template, we can build in our own customized script. The script body and the command line information can be manually updated. And we can also configure whether the script has to be executed from the OpManager installed server or directly from the monitored machine. This configuration can be performed and we can set it. So this script template will allow us to run the script, test the response, and if there is any abnormality being identified, it will notify to us. So the configuration is same as we see: settings, monitoring, and here we have the script template, and we can add our own scripts right over here. And the associate option is same as before, and also adding the script to an individual device is also same like how we discussed before. We can navigate it to the specific device. On the monitoring section, we can add in our script monitors. Next, coming to the event log monitoring. So in my servers, I will be getting multiple events, starting from booting the machine, and if I'm doing any task, installing the application, deleting some process, or any scan being detected, any information has been blocked, all these information will be captured on our event log. So in OpManager application, we have a default feature that can read your event logs, and it can notify you if any specific event has been raised. And this configuration can be made similar to the settings, monitoring, event log monitors. So here I can add a rule. So here the information has to be updated. What is the rule name that we can provide it as per our requirement? I can put in the event ID. So whenever there is an event being triggered, if we navigate into the Windows Event Log Manager, we can find the event ID, source, category, username information. Those data has to be filled in on the respective column, and we can put in a match text. So if the match text value, what we are updating here, it is present on the event log message, it will be considered to be something that we have to notify that is a problem. And the event type, whether it is error, warning, information, or critical, that has to be updated. And similar, the consecutive times, or when the alarm has to be triggered, and what severity the alarm has to be triggered. This information can be associated. And similar to the configuration, we can add the event log rule here, and we can navigate into the individual device, and also we can add the event logs here. So always we have options on multiple areas. So if we want to do a customized configuration for a specific device, we can go ahead with the device specific configuration. If we want to make a global configuration and associate it to multiple devices at a single stretch, I have my global way of configuration and monitor association. Next, the URL monitoring. So here in OpManager application, we can monitor the availability of the URL. So it could be a GET request or a POST request. Both are supported on the product, and we are using the curl command for monitoring the URL availability. So the discovery method is the same. We can go to this monitor, we can go to this URL monitor, add in the details, or we can go to settings, monitoring, URL. It's same process. It remains same. We can add our URLs, put in the name for our understanding, enter in the URL information, and mention whether it is a GET method or a POST method, put in the monitoring interval, timeout, and the consecutive times for it. And similarly, if we want, this is an additional configuration of match text and request parameter that we can add it on the URL monitoring. And then we can check now to see whether it is available or not. Once it is done, we can get that information. Okay, so here we are done with the physical server monitoring, and now we are getting into the network monitoring. So the application can monitor the networking device, like the routing devices, switch, firewalls, network printers, LAN controllers, UPS, and load balancers. So here we can monitor the performance metric of the networking devices, and also we can monitor the network performance, like the traffic, link bandwidth utilization, and if I want to do a IP SLA, service level agreement, jitter, round trip time, this monitoring. And if I want to identify a network path, the connectivity between hops and which hop currently have a problem where there is a packet drop, I can also identify using my network performance monitoring. Similar to the server monitoring, even for the networking device, we do the hardware sensor monitoring. So here on the column 2, column 4, the performance metric and the hardware sensor monitoring, it remains same how we discussed for the servers. And the additional feature is the network performance, where we have a few built-in features that can go ahead and monitor your network status. And let's move to the topic of interface monitoring. I can add any device. It could be a networking device, it could be a server. All these machines have an interface on it. And using OpManager, I can go ahead, monitor my interface. And here the interface monitoring is going to help us get the information of the availability. So the availability, I'm referring to the admin status and the operational status of the interface. And this interface monitoring in OpManager is processed through SNMP protocol. So if I want my interface to be monitored in OpManager, I want to have the SNMP service running on the device, and the SNMP protocol has to be associated in OpManager application. Once an interface is added in the application, along with the availability, I do get the information of the traffic, the bandwidth, the error, and discard rate. I'll take you into the GUI to quickly show how this information looks like. I go to a certain device to show the interface information. So this is one router which I have here, and I navigate into the interfaces. So these are all the total interfaces which is being discovered and monitored for the particular router. I can access this interface specifically to identify what is the admin and the operational status. Here I will also get the interface name, and also I will get the additional information about the traffic counter, what is the speed of the interface, and the utilization information. And I go to the interface traffic. Okay, this is a demo website where we don't have the data for the interface traffic. In the real time, we will have that information over there. So the traffic data and graph plottings are available, and you can see the applications which has been consuming your traffic, and the top source of their traffic consumption is being available. So similar to how we have configured the thresholds for the servers availability performance monitor, we do have an option to configure the thresholds for the interface. Let me show you. On the top right, we have a more option. When I navigate here, I see an option of configure interface. Here, I will get the information of the traffic counter and the speed of the interface. So the threshold configuration here, it depends upon the percentage of utilization. If I'm identifying, say, for example, my bandwidth consumption, if it goes beyond 70%, I want to get an alert. So how this 70% is calculated is based upon the speed of the interface. So the interface speed will be calculated here based upon the speed. If there is a bandwidth consumption beyond the percentage that we are configuring on the threshold, it's going to raise an alert. So utilization, error, and discard rate, we can configure the threshold over here. And this is the status poll details. The status poll is nothing but I'm monitoring an interface in the application, but I don't want the application to trigger an alerts. The interface has to be present on the product, but I don't want to trigger an alert. The status polling should not happen for the interface. In that case, I have a flexibility to either enable it or disable it. And similarly, I can configure the consecutive times for the alarms, whether I want the alarms to be triggered right away when there is a problem detected, or should I wait till a specific set of consecutive times. This can be configured over here. And the thresholds interval can also be configured for how long. I mean, once in every few minutes, we have to get the interfaces being monitored. So this is the configuration for the single interface. And if I want to make a threshold configuration for bulk of interfaces, I can navigate to settings, configuration, interface template, interface types. I can access a specific interface. Here I can put in the threshold values. And I do a save and apply. So this is a demo website. You can do it in your environment where it will list down the set of devices, whether we want to apply this configuration for all the devices or only a specific group of devices. That navigation will help us to select which device has to get these configuration changes reflected. We can do the configuration of the interface over there. Monitoring WAN and VoIP. So OpManager is using a Cisco IPSLA technology to monitor the WAN and VoIP. So I'll just take you how this technology works. This is running through the SNMP protocol. So as we know, the VoIP monitoring is most important to get the jitter information, round trip time, to identify how was the quality or what is the voice quality and all these information. Here on the product, we are using a method of adding a IPSLA monitor to the source device. So whenever we are adding a VoIP monitor in OpManager application using an SNMP protocol, the mandatory requirement is to make sure that we have a Cisco IPSLA responder being enabled on the machine. So using the Cisco IPSLA responder, the application will receive the information. For example, the router will send a IPSLA traps whenever there is an event generated due to connection loss or any kind of threshold violations. So this information will be collected by the OpManager and it will use the patch echo tracing to identify where exactly we have the fault. I mean, in which exact hop we have the problem. This will be monitored by the application. To do this, it has to be a Cisco router, an IPSLA responder has to be enabled, and we need an SNMP protocol to monitor it, and the SNMP should have a read and write privilege whenever we are trying to add the device, because the write privilege is mandatory to add a IPSLA monitor configuration in your source device. And once it is added, through which the application will get the data for the monitoring and it will update us. And this will be very much helpful when you want to test a link, for example, from your office, you want to check the link status from a different location. You can use this technology of VoIP monitoring and get that information gathered. So let me show you on the GUI how this information looks like. So right now I'm on the demo website. Okay, in network WAN monitoring. Okay, this demo website here, I don't have a traffic. Maybe I will switch to a different demo website. Just give me a second. So we have few demo websites. One is for dedicated OpManager, and we have a dedicated OpManager Plus, and also a demo website for individual add-ons present. Maybe I'll share the link information where you can access and check this information. Okay, so I'm here on the VoIP monitor. I'm accessing it. This is providing me the information of the jitter, round trip time, packet loss, and latency. And this is how the screen will looks like with all the information once it is added in the OpManager application. And here I can further go to my WAN monitors. And even for WAN monitors, we have all these information being identified and monitored on the product. This can also be even configured for a notification profile to get a notification alert. That we have a separate session on the upcoming days, that how to configure a notification profile, because we discussed about adding a device and application and what metrics needs to be monitored, how to enable a threshold which has to be considered there is a problematic condition. The next step is to get a notification alert that we will be discussing on the upcoming meetings. This is how our WAN monitoring will appear. Next, coming to the network path analysis. This is most important and interesting feature that we have over here, because generally whenever I'm doing a monitoring, I can get the information. I'm sending a packet from source to destination. For some reason, the packet drops. I know there is a packet drop, but I want to know in which hop the packet has dropped and what is the time taken to transmit the packet between each hops. This information is something critical to understand where exactly I have the problem in my network. So this is achieved through other network path analysis. So here the application will go ahead, send the packets, and very important thing, the application is using a TCP packet, because in some environment we found ICMP and UDP are restricted for the security reason. So this is the reason why we have brought a TCP packet to trace route that information and get the data over the network path analysis. And next we have the virtualization monitoring. So virtualization monitoring, it will more or less similar to how we discussed on the server monitoring. In server monitoring, we have saw about the availability performance metric. In virtualization monitoring, we will get some additional information, that is a VMware related data. For example, I have my vCenter discovered in the OpManager application. And after discovery, I have to get all the information about the host which is being connected to the vCenter and what are all the VMs present over there and in which vCenter these VMs are added. I need all the information to be presented in that application. So this is possible using our virtualization monitoring. So this is how the vCenter snapshot page looks like once we discovered the vCenter in OpManager. It is providing me the number of hosts and the virtual machines and the data stores present over here. And here on the vCenter, we also have an option to monitor the VMware event. So whenever, similar to the Windows events, whenever there is an event being generated on the vSphere client, we can get this information notified on the real time using the monitoring metrics that we can associate on the product. So this virtual machines, when I navigate over here, it is more or less similar to how we saw during the server monitoring. The summary page, monitoring page. If I have my SNMP protocol, then I'll have my interfaces and install softwares. All these information will be a straightforward data. I think we are running out of time. I need to just quickly rush and let you know. Maybe I'll explain the technology over here. The most important challenge what we have with the server admin is they might be frequently moving the VMs between multiple hosts, and there will be some orphan VMs present over there. So here in OpManager, we have a technology where whenever there is a VM migration happening on the environment, the application can automatically identify it and it will update that information on the product to make sure that the exact state is what we see on the vSphere client is replicated on the product without even a single difference. So this is happening through the VMware protocol, where the application is having an automatic scanning feature built in on the application. So this will get your information exactly whenever there is any changes being implemented on the vSphere client. So storage monitoring we have here. So storage devices like RAID, tape library, FC switch, if you want to monitor such storage devices, we can use our storage monitoring feature on the product to get it. So this is mostly important and required in any business. And I'll show you the navigation, how it looks like. I go to my storage. Here I have 3 different set of tabs for the RAID, tape library, and FC switch. I go to any one storage device over here. And here I will get the complete summary information. Along with it, here if you look into the page, I can see my zoning info, and also I can see the port details. So this port is currently being online. What is the speed of the port? And also I see the FC ID admin status, hardware status over here. This hardware information, the sensor monitoring that comes by default, and interface monitoring will be fetched when I have an SNMP protocol. And this monitoring will get me the sensor and also the required metrics that I want for the storage device. What is the size of the disk? Even I can get my LUN information, array data size. All these data can be captured using our storage monitoring. But when we are discussing about storage monitoring, few things we have to be considered. The application is using a different set of technologies and protocols. Traditionally, when we were looking into the storage device, I mean a decade ago, when we are looking into a storage device, it has been using an SMI protocol. And gradually, when the technology developed, we started to use an SNMP in the globally on the business. And then slowly the API come into picture, where API become the most preferred protocol. So whenever I'm purchasing a storage device from a different vendor and a different model, that particular model might be supporting a storage API, or it might be supporting an SNMP, or it might be supporting some CLIs or SMI. So based upon the vendor and based upon the model, in OpManager application, we have enhanced the way of discovering the storage device and monitoring it on the product. And here I will show you a documentation, help.opmanager.com. Here we have the complete information starting from the introduction to the product till what are all the features we have and how to add and discover it. And all these monitoring information are presented over here along with the prerequisites. So here I go to the storage monitoring and I have my supported storage models. So here we have provided all the information, what should be the prerequisites and what protocol has been used. Here, if you look into this page, depends upon the vendor and model, we have mentioned the supported protocol data. So you can look into this information to understand what protocols has been supported on the respective model, and we can enable that respective protocol to monitor it on the OpManager application. In product level, we can go to the storage, and if we want to add a storage device, here we have the option. We have to select the model, put in the IP address of the storage device, select the protocol, depends upon the model, and we can click on test connection to see the response, and then click on OK to get it discovered. Next, we will move into the hardware monitoring. So hardware sensor monitoring, we have to consider the SNMP protocol. For all the networking devices and physical servers, the hardware sensor monitored is happening through the SNMP protocol. Whenever we add the device in OpManager application, the sensors will also get added by default, and it will start monitoring on the product. In case it is a VM machine and we are discovering the VMs through the ESX host or vCenter, then the VMware protocol is sufficient to perform the hardware sensor monitoring. So this hardware sensor data will be added into the application by default, and depends upon the vendor. We have hard-coded the threshold values for the hardware sensor monitoring. So anything gone faulty, like the fan speed or the status of the fan, temperature, chases information, all these data, temperature, voltage, power supply, everything will be monitored. And if there is a fault, the application will notify it right away during the polling. And here comes with the passive monitoring. I'll tell you what is a cool feature here on the passive monitoring. So as a network admin, we do have syslog way of monitoring and SNMP trap way of monitoring. I hope it might be used on a many appliance. And for example, I have my machine which is being enabled with an SNMP service. So by default, this SNMP service will be running on the port 161. I also have something called as a SNMP trap service. This is running on the protocol port number 162. So this SNMP trap is something similar to a logs, event logs, but not exactly. It is similar to it. So whenever there is a critical event or a problem being identified or monitored on the device, I have a flexibility to enable my SNMP trap configuration on the device, and I can define a destination machine to send the trap messages. So this is a raw message, raw trap message. So whenever we are configuring a network device, we might have seen this option during the SNMP configuration. There will be SNMP service and there will be SNMP trap service. This trap will allow us to send the raw message to any destination machine using the 162 port number. So application OpManager can do a real-time SNMP trap monitoring. It is not depends upon the monitoring interval or other factors. If there is a SNMP trap being generated on your source machine, it is a real-time monitoring. The application will receive the traps because OpManager application is also a SNMP trap receiver. I go to settings, monitoring, SNMP trap process. I can see the trap viewer. So if I click on the trap viewer, and this is a demo site, clicking on start. So whatever trap I'm receiving to this machine where the OpManager is hosted, all the traps will be listed right over here. So I have a flexibility to define a trap monitoring configuration where I can do a real-time monitoring through the SNMP trap and get notified right away if there is a problem in the machines. So to add this trap monitoring, we can just go to the SNMP trap processor, and here we have an option to add. We can select the SNMP version and we can directly add the name and type of the traps and the trap OID, and we can add it on the application. Similarly, we also do a real-time syslog monitoring. So if there is a syslog being sent on the configured port number, the application is capable of receiving the real-time syslog message, and it will get us notified if there is any syslog message is meeting the match condition that we are configuring it on the product. And finally, we have the Meraki ACI IPMI, wherein Meraki, we do the monitoring of the security switch, radio, cellular gateway, and visions. So this monitoring of Meraki is happening through the Meraki API. So the Meraki is actually an organization. So Cisco has designed an organization and it is named as a Meraki controller. So this controller can be monitored, and this is especially used to identify the multiple networks. It is a connectivity between multiple networks and access points. This information can be monitored over here. And also we have the ACI. So ACI is nothing but it is a SDN monitoring for the Cisco application-centric infrastructures, wherein we can get the fabric, tenant, endpoint groups, all these information can be monitored. And IPMI is again a hardware sensor monitoring, where we are providing the monitoring service of hardware sensor using SNMP or a Redfish API, through which we are monitoring based upon the vendors. It depends upon the vendor, we are providing the hardware sensor monitoring technology. And we also have the email address for our OpManager support team, and there is a callback number, a toll-free number. You can also use that one, and also a Reddit site. You can make use of that. Thank you all. So we are completed with a day 2 session, and hope we will see it on the upcoming meetings. Thank you all.